today I'll be making some nachos. I absolutely love nachos, and the best part about making these at home is that it's really easy to customize them and make them into a full meal. So I'm going to start by making the chips. So when I started making these nachos, I didn't realize, but I was running very low on oil. So I decided to air fry the tortillas and make them into chips that way instead of frying them because it would require less oil. So I grabbed about 8 tortillas or so, and I'm just drizzling a little bit of olive oil on them. And then I'll kind of rub the oil everywhere to make sure that tortillas are pretty well coated in oil. And then I am going to slice them into about 8 pieces each, so I'll kind of slice them in half and then slice them in 4 pieces. I was initially a little bit worried about not having enough oil, and I wasn't sure how they were going to turn out in the air fryer because I had never done them that way, and they actually turned out pretty well, and I think from now on I'll probably make them this way. I just drizzled a little bit of salt on the tortillas and then I laid them on my air fryer. I tried to put them all in a single layer, but it didn't really matter very much because once the air fryer turned on, that air was kind of blowing the tortillas everywhere, and some of them ended up like under that tray. But I just used a fork to lift up the tray and lift the tortillas out of there. So it doesn't really matter if it's not in a single layer. And I'm going to air fry these at 390 degrees for about 4 minutes. The first batch did take about 5 or 6 minutes to be done, but I think it's because the air fryer wasn't preheated, because the second and third batch only took about 3 to 4 minutes. And I did all of those tortillas in about 4 batches. And once they were done, this is what they look like. They're not as golden brown as they would be if you deep fry them, but they are still pretty good and they honestly tasted really good. So I will be using my air fryer to make these from now on. And here I am loading up the air fryer for my second batch, and I just continue doing this until all of my tortillas were air fried. In the meantime, I'm going to start to shred my cheese. Today I'm using Colby Jack cheese, and I'm using about a third of this 16-ounce package. Sometimes I like to use Monterey Jack, sometimes I like to use cheddar. Today I'm using Colby Jack. Sometimes I like to use a combination of cheeses, and that works really well too. I always choose to shred my own cheese instead of the pre-shredded cheese because I feel like it melts better. But if the pre-shredded cheese is all you have, I'm sure that would work just fine. And now I'm going to start working on the carne asada. So I'm going to drizzle a little bit of oil onto this pan. If you have a cast iron, that would probably work a lot better. My cast iron needs to be reseasoned, so that's why I'm using this pan here. But I added the meat and cooked it on both sides for about 4 minutes or so. I did marinate this meat earlier in the day. I marinated it for about 4 hours and brought it out the fridge about 30 minutes before it was ready to cook. These are all the ingredients that I used for the marinade, and this is probably one of the best marinades that I've ever had. And I will link the video that I got this marinade from in the description box below. So I highly recommend this meat marinade. I do think I went a little bit heavy on the lime. Maybe next time I'll use less lime, but it was still really, really good. And once the meat is fully cooked, I'm going to remove it from the pan and put it on a cutting board and let it rest for about 10 minutes or so while the rest of the ingredients are done. Now that the chips, the cheese, and the carne asada are ready, I'm going to start to build my nachos. I added some parchment paper onto this glass baking dish to make cleanup easier. And then I'm going to make my nachos into 2 layers. I like to do 2 layers because I feel like it makes them a lot cheesier and just more filling. So I add half of the chips down to the first layer, and then I will top that with some of this shredded cheese. And then I'm also going to add some beans that I refried earlier in the day. I absolutely love adding beans to my nachos. I feel like it makes it a much more filling meal. It adds more protein, and honestly, beans are just one of my favorite things to eat, so I love adding these to my nachos. And then I'm going to build my second layer, so I'm just going to repeat the same process. So add some chips, add some cheese, and then top with some beans. And then I am also going to top that with a little bit more cheese on top. Now I'm going to place the nachos in a preheated oven for about 10 or 15 minutes until the cheese is melted. I have the oven set at about 350 degrees, and I'm using my toaster oven because it was way too hot to turn on my big oven this day. I'm also going to work on the rest of my toppings, so I'm going to make some quick guac. This is some Pico de Gallo that I had made earlier in the day, and I like to make guac with the Pico de Gallo because it's just so easy to just transfer the ingredients into another bowl. So what I do is I slice open this avocado, and then I will put all of the avocado into this bowl. And then I'll just scoop some of the Pico de Gallo, which is tomato, onion, cilantro, and jalapeno, lemon and salt. So a lot of the ingredients that you would typically put in guac, I will just scoop the pico de gallo into the bowl and mix everything together. And then I finished it up with a little bit of lemon and salt. And I just mix all of that together, and this is what it looks like once it's done. This avocado came out so creamy, and it made the guac so delicious. So now that the nachos are out of the oven, I'm just going to finish topping them off. So I'm going to add some of the carne asada right on top. I just went ahead and chopped that into small pieces. And then I'm going to add some of the pico de gallo. And I just went ahead and added all of the pico de gallo on there just to add some more vegetables to this meal and make it a more full and nutritious meal. And then I topped all of that with a delicious guac that I just made, and we really like guac, so I added plenty of that. And I finished all of that up with some pickled jalapenos and sprinkled some cotija cheese right on top. And these nachos were just absolutely delicious. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.